Some of you watching may not even know what Pikmin 2 is, and that's fair enough. I mean, the game came out in 2004 for the Gamecube, so it's practically an ancient game. But it was actually one of my favourite games of all time, and I played it a lot back in primary school. Since the game is called Pikmin 2, it is a sequel to Pikmin 1, in which you play as this man's, Captain Olimar, trying to rebuild your broken ship after crash landing on a strange planet called PNF 404, which I'm just going to call Earth. The aim of the game was to rebuild your ship within the 30 days, or you literally die, because Olimar can't breathe oxygen on this Earth-like planet. What a pussy. He should have just grew gills, like a fish or something. The world is filled with different Pikmin, with their different resistances being linked to their colours, except for purple and white, which are heavy and poison resistance respectively. Even though I did have Pikmin 1, for some reason I didn't play it that much. Most likely due to the 30-day time limit that put unnecessary stress on my 2-year-old brain, which was already stressed out about my stats. However, Pikmin 2 was a different story, as I loved playing it due to the odd charm it gave off. And you could tell it had a certain charming aesthetic from the title screen alone, with the word Pikmin 2 being formed from the flowers on top of the Pikmin's heads as they swayed in the wind and dispersed when a bulbul ran into the group. It could have also been due to the mechanics of the game that were simplistic yet complex at times. The fantastical nature of the enemies, the simplistic yet effective stages of each level, the fitting aesthetic of obstacles and objects, or the ridiculously animated cutscenes that looked like they were created by Disney itself. Or even the fact that there were no time limits, making the game a lot more relaxed compared to its predecessor, which gave the game a more child-friendly feel. Especially the fact that the game opens up to your boss getting you into 10 grand of debt. Even after selling your ship that you literally risked your life to fix on a foreign planet full of carnivorous creatures.
Nigga. What the fuck?
Not only this, but he also sends you back to Earth to pay it off. With this debt you have involuntarily incurred, you get another employee called Louis, who also comes with you to Earth to help pay off the debt by gathering various items from our time. This ranges from a simple bottle cap that can be sold for some quick guap, to a dumbbell that can be sold for 3 whole bands. The game starts off again with you somewhat crash landing into Earth. However, it's all Gucci, because you didn't lose any ship parts, just some irrelevant things like Louis.
Do you honestly think you're fucking funny? But I'll tell you what, you fat little... You don't sound Nigerian at all.
Captain Olimar is the first character you play as, and upon landing you see a bunch of Pikmin beating the absolute shit out of a mushroom dinosaur. Since you've already been to this planet in the previous game, you're practically Pikmin Jesus, so you can command the Pikmin to slaughter the bulbul whilst you watch and feed its lifeless corpse to the onion. Something about being able to enslave a whole race to do your bidding even if it kills them, whilst they have no say as they're being hypnotised by your whistle into mindless obedience as you throw them to their deaths. It's great, and made the game a whole lot more fun for my infantile brain. The first mission you do acts as a sort of a basic tutorial, with the ship's AI telling you tips and tricks to help you accustom to the game, if you weren't familiar with the controls and concept from Pikmin 1. Also, in the first mission, you end up meeting back up with Louis, as he doesn't fall that far away from where the designated landing spot for the ship is.
Where you fucking come from, you dirty dragon-eating little fucking spastic. Right, okay, the dragon comment was probably...
But the first item worth any money you get is a Duracell battery. From here, the story just continues as you encounter new enemies, new types of Pikmin, and new dungeons to explore, with an interesting plot twist to say the least at the end. In Pikmin, you'll end up delving deep into harrowing dungeons, with unique mechanics, such as there being traps sprinkled throughout, with specific elements that require certain Pikmin to either ease the burden on the exploration, or to allow the player to even be able to complete it. One of my favourites is the submerged castle, which can only be accessed with blue Pikmin, as the entrance to the cave is submerged underwater. This cave has 5 different levels, with each level being based on the 5 different elements in the game. Now I know heavy isn't technically an element, but it plays a major role in the game, so I've decided to classify it as one. This puts the player into a predicament, as you cannot combat each of the levels with their respective coloured Pikmin, and are instead forced to compromise and figure out other ways to complete each level than just brute force. This is probably one of the most difficult caves in the game, not only due to this lack of element compatibility, but also the boss of the cave, the Water Wraith. With its unique mechanic of entering any stage after 5 minutes.
Speak too soon. I really don't want to speak too soon. But I think that's the last treasure. And I think we've gone without setting off what it is I am so afraid of.
I just had to open my mouth! I just had to say it! As soon as I finish them!
So not only do you have to deal with other mobs spawning in caves, but you also have the constant looming threat of the boss spawning if you take too long exploring around in the stage. Keep in mind that no other boss does this in the whole of the game. Did I also mention the fact the boss is from another dimension and can one-shot your Pikmin by crushing them with its wheels? No? Well, now you know, and I wish I could just dimension slash this bitch in half, but alas, it's physically impossible to kill it until you reach the final stage and fight it in the boss room. Since you're incapable of doing damage to the boss with your standard blue Pikmin, it's completely invincible.
Trash!
And as you cannot take any other Pikmin, another great mechanic comes in, the candy pop buds. These buds essentially convert any Pikmin you throw into them into the corresponding colour of the bud, and are a great way to help the player when needed. For example, the presence of violet buds in the submerged castle's final stage allowed for the creation of purple Pikmin needed to stun the Water Wraith. With this conversion of blues to purples, you can finally take down the Water Wraith once and for all, with an extremely satisfying end as it attempts to run away from you as you send your Pikmin to bash its skull in.
I'm joking! Stop! 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 Stop the break! Stop!
And this is only the tip of the iceberg, as there are many caves you can explore throughout the game. Each cave you finish has a sense of completion, as well as progression, as the boss at the end drops an upgrade to your arsenal, such as a love detector that is converted into a treasure gauge that indicates whether you are close to potential treasure, or the top half of a red robot toy that can be used to provide fire immunity when fused with your suit. Every little thing in this game seems to help improve your quality of life in the game, from the aforementioned upgrades to stocking up sprays that can either encase your enemies in stone, or power up your Pikmin with increased stats for a set amount of time. On the other hand though, the game is unforgiving, meaning that if you accidentally leave any of your Pikmin out in the world without returning them to their homes in the Onions before the night comes, you can see them helplessly struggle as they watch their fellow friends and brethren be devoured like an Attack on Titan. You know, I think I now realise why I had nightmares playing this game. It's actually really fucked up if you think about it.
Oh my god, it seems that I was in a dream.
But then as your shuttle blasts off into the darkness of space, the serene music kicks in. That juxtaposes the atrocities you have witnessed and the horrific deaths of Pikmin that have just occurred. Everything about this calming sequence is great, as it tallies up your gains and losses for the day, whilst acting as a contrast to the intense gameplay to help establish a balance between the verge of a heart attack and the verge of just chilling and mellowing out. After this sequence, you end up on the map screen, in which you can see a ship flying alongside the onions you have currently unlocked, with this 10 out of 10 music playing in the background. From here you can choose to travel between the various areas in the game. Additionally, from the map screen you can access 2 different menus, one of which allows you to open your Piklopedia and see all the monsters you have defeated. You can also interact with them by feeding them carrots.
You're yummy!
Nom nom nom.
The other menu includes all the treasures you've unlocked, with the ability to inspect them as if you couldn't just inspect a battery in real life. So far I've only talked about the single player aspect of the game, which is already a whole ass cake with icing and everything, but the addition of local multiplayer versus mode was the cherry on top. No one likes having to idly watch their friends play a game, so instead you just connect another controller to the Gamecube and play against them. In Versus, there are 10 different maps you can play on, with one specific map having a big ass spider as a boss that spawns in the middle of the map for some reason. The game mode is essentially capture the flag, but with marbles instead. There are 4 different ways in which you can win the game, which are 1. Collecting 4 neutral marbles hidden around the map. 2. Stealing the enemy's marble. 3. Killing all their Pikmin. Or 4. Having the enemy captain die. Unfortunately, you cannot directly damage the enemy captain, so you have to hope they lose all their brain cells and die of natural causes instead. But what you can do is sabotage the enemy via collecting a cherry and rolling a roulette which can give you any of the following power-ups. These range from a simple increase of 5 extra Pikmin to spawning a blowhog that will either burn the Pikmin alive or drown them. I used to play this with my mates when they came around, however it was slightly unfair as they had no idea what they were doing as none of them actually owned the game. But let's not talk about that part. Everything in this game seems to be well thought out, from the puzzles to the bosses, with a newly introduced 2-man captain system that is actually quite useful in breaking up the squads to accomplish certain feats, and has led to a thoroughly enjoyable experience back in the day, and will most likely stay in my top 5 games of all time, which include Destiny 1 and Minecraft. To conclude, I believe this game is a must play for anyone who loves puzzle strategy games, and even with its somewhat outdated graphics, it's still great heaps of fun. Overall, I rate this
Shit, man.
This shit is walking. That is weed. That's supposed to be loud, ain't it? Is that supposed to be loud? That's me. Lord.
out of.